This is Rick Goodrich, your Chief of Safety and Security for Boerne ISD, and you're listening to The Ascent with Crestmont Private Wealth.
The opinions expressed are those of the host. The material is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute investment advice, and it is not intended as an endorsement for any specific investment. Visit CrestmontPW.com for more details.
Welcome to The Ascent. This is Sam McGee with Crestmont Private Wealth. We have offices in Houston, Texas, and Boerne, Texas, and I'm coming to you from the Boerne studio right off Main Street with my good friend, Brian Reilly. We've been doing this almost 2 years now, haven't we?
Crazy, isn't it?
And it's nuts.
It's by fast.
Absolutely nuts. And, you know, thinking back, we've had a lot of first responders on the air in our podcasts, and that's important to me. A little shout out to our class that just recently graduated. Actually, by the time this airs, we have a number of volunteers in Kendall County that took a Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, hazmat operations and awareness, and are all certified now. So pretty cool. So I'm 50 and I'm finally certified. How about that? Kind of neat. So our guest today is a chief of the fire department over in Sisterdale, which is a short walk north of Boerne. Those of you probably know it if you're motorcycle people or car people as a really awesome route to get up to Fredericksburg, tiny little town. Brian Reilly, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, Brian, I know that we refer to you as Chief Reilly in the context of the volunteer position that you've got, but tell our audience a little bit about you and how you got into the fire service and what you do for a living day to day.
Yeah, you bet. I came into it with no fire background, no fire experience at it. I was a kid who wanted to drive a big red truck, but I'd always lived in places where there wasn't really an opportunity to do that unless I was going to do it as a career. And I never really did it, right? So I moved out to Sisterdale about 15 years ago and saw the opportunity, so I joined up. And, that in itself is a little bit of a leap of faith, right? It's hard to walk into a fire station, especially in a small rural community, and say, hey, I want to be a part of this, because it's a pretty tight-knit group, right? So you're very aware that you're an outsider when you walk in there, but fell in love with it. I can't stop doing it, right? I tell people I joined to serve my community and to help other people. I stayed because I felt the need to serve my fellow responders. When the pager goes off and I see only one person responding, that's a pretty strong motivator to me that, one of my people or somebody else needs help that's not necessarily the public. I mean, the public service is always there, but it evolves into you want to do a better job for the person next to you. And now I can't stop doing it. I don't know how to be anything else. So, my background, I went to college, got a degree, got a fancy job, worked as a data analyst for medical device companies and as an analytics manager for a number of years in the corporate world, right about 20 years. And after all the rounds of layoffs after COVID, I kind of felt like I needed to make a change. So I ended up buying a local business that is, better aligned with kind of the values that I have. It's a fire and life safety services business called Ready Pro Safety, and we're based here in Boerne, and that's what I do now. Is I run a small business and a fire department, and I do not run the household.
Well said. Well said. Well, Brian, I think back to a year ago in a week, and I'm really glad that we're recording this a week after America's birthday, because that was a really somber occasion. And, thinking back to what happened at the floods last year, maybe for our listeners, share a little bit about, your station's involvement here in Kendall County and what that was like and what it meant to you to see, the volunteers and those that are career out there putting themselves in harm's way.
Yeah. So Sisterdale is on the river, although quite a way south of, or downriver rather, of Kerrville. But here in the county, we had the advantage of a fair bit of warning and daylight and all that before the waters hit. But I've seen the bridge on 1376, the big bridge there just south of Sisterdale. I've seen it underwater twice now. and Memorial Day floods in 15 and 16, and then this 4th of July. But I've never seen it come up that fast. We were all very surprised at how little time it took to pass markers when, Comfort called and said, hey, it's in Comfort, and then Waring, and then it got to us, and just the volume of debris. Right away, we kind of knew this was a different deal. This was a different scale. We had seen that volume of water, but not that. I mean, you could almost walk across the debris, and we hadn't seen it come up anywhere near that fast. So we had some warning. Our fire marshal, Brady Constantine, called that morning and said, hey, big flooding upriver. Need you to get your guys, get to the station, get ready for whatever comes. The 4th itself was, we did what we could, but we were fairly limited in how far we could get. We were boxed in by low water crossings, Zeller Lane, and some of those areas. So there was only so far we could go on the 4th. The 5th, we sent a crew out to Comfort to start doing recoveries upstream, primarily of Comfort, between Center Point and Comfort. And we had some recoveries actually downstream of Sisterdale that day. And then that evening, again, Brady called and said, hey, do you mind taking over operations command for this, and we'll just run it out of your station since you're in the middle of the county? I said, sure. I called my leadership group and said, hey, guess what? The circus is coming to Sisterdale tomorrow, and it's not leaving. So we had a lot of people step up. We had put a lot of, this is a department that I think we had 8 people when I took over as chief in 2020, 8 or 9. And we've got 33 on the roster today. So we had put a lot of effort into sort of raising our game. And I wouldn't say we were eager for the opportunity because of the nature of the flood, but we were in a position where we had accumulated quite a few high quality people, high impact players, and it was a good opportunity for them to shine. So yeah, we ran the county operations piece of this out of our station, and we had out-of-state assets. We had assets from all over Texas, mounted patrol from Austin. We had the boat teams from Alamo Heights, which is huge. Those guys, man, they're kind of the unsung heroes of this to me. That, that's a paid department deep in San Antonio, but they've got some water specialists, and their battalion chief, Jeremy Herbert, came out with his boat guys, and they were on the water. I'm pretty sure that Alamo Heights actually covered every inch of the river by water from one end of the county all the way to the other.
Wow. And
they just kept coming out day after day after day. And, there's real impact to that. You had mentioned the, paid and volunteer sort of thing, that fires don't discriminate between paid and volunteer. Incidents don't discriminate in general. And some of those guys, in fact, ended up hospitalized with some flesh-eating bacteria afterward from their time in the water. So they're, it's things like that. I think a lot of people didn't realize that there was a fairly long-term impact, and those are the kind of things that don't care if you're getting paid or not. But yeah, we had volunteers from all over the place. One of the bigger challenges, honestly, was that when people found out that we were going to be a focal point there for this, we had people coming out of the woodwork, which is fantastic, but we couldn't utilize an awful lot of these people. They're very well intentioned, but they would come out and say, I kayak this river, every weekend, and I grew up out here, and I know every inch of this, and put me to work. I want to go search. And, those are valuable skill sets, and that's a valuable service mindset, but it doesn't just integrate into how emergency services works. And, they don't have the radio protocols. They don't understand what's going on around them. We can't just plug them in. And we had some outside groups that, we had a group of Navy special warfare people that showed up to help, and yeah, absolutely, we'll put you to work. But the other piece of this really was, a lot of these people really were moved by what happened and felt the need to help, but I'm not sure they knew what they were really asking for, right? The skill set to go down the river is one thing. The compartmentalization that responders have had to practice and learn so that they can deal with what you're actually going to find in that job is a little different. And I couldn't in good conscience take people who live a normal civilian life and throw them into that. And, there's slides in their slideshow in their head that are going to be there for the rest of their life. So that's a big challenge.
Well, it's a really good shout out here on that note to Jillian Rodriguez here in the community, and many others who also stepped forward, but very selflessly stepped forward time for first responders through counseling services in the aftermath of that. I know that there's a number of organizations, Hill Country Family Services and others, that had a huge outpouring. And you're exactly right. I mean, some of the things that first responders see and deal with, they last with them. Thank God that we've had a lot of rain, but it's been safe rain this year, and hopefully we can get some more of that safe rain through the remainder of the year. I'm going to pivot a little bit, Brian, and I want to highlight a couple things because I think you made a good point about, single-digit volunteers up to a roster around 30. A lot of people don't know this, but, in the United States, about 70% of the U.S. fire departments are completely volunteer, and about 15% are mostly volunteer. I think a lot of people just don't know that. And so, if you're listening to this and you feel called to serve your community and you're interested in serving over at Bernie Fire or Condelia or Waring or Comfort or Sisterdale, Bergheim, you name it, how would somebody get involved? I mean, share a little bit about kind of the right approach for someone to get involved, not when disaster strikes, but to be trained and to be ready. What would that look like? And walk through what the training looks like, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up on a positive note.
Yeah, you bet. So first, I think you raised a valuable point there that there were a lot of people who wanted to help, and most of them didn't know how to help. And then there were some people who wanted to help and knew how to help, and they made an outsized impact, from what their day-to-day lives are. And I mean, you mentioned Hill Country Family Services. Bryce Bodie was right there throughout all of this, and Rick Goodrich, the Safety and Security Council, the safety and security chief for Bernie ISD, was highly engaged in this. But it wasn't just that. I mean, I saw a thing later. I didn't see any of the social media at the time. We didn't have time for that. But I saw something later that there was a guy out, I think Centerpoint or Kerrville, somewhere out there, and he does hydraulics repair. And so he just set up shop on the side of the road and offered free hydraulic hose and hydraulic cylinder repair for all the heavy equipment that was working out there and breaking things and blowing lines and all that. And those are people who they have a will to serve, and they know how to put their hands to work with that. And, there were a lot of those sort of, like I said, kind of unsung heroes, people that just, they said, I know something I can do in this, and they stepped up and did it. So, and you're exactly right that, the preparation for this comes long before the actual event. It's, as you well know from your experience with Bernie, firefighting is not what you see on TV. It's not pretty faces and conversations and smoke, somehow buildings that have no smoke in them but raging fire everywhere and high drama and all that. That's not what it is. It's just hours and hours and hours of work, and then it's pretty uncomfortable manual labor when it's time to do the job. And it takes a certain mindset to do that. But, in today's world, there's a lot of people who feel like, volunteerism is failing, volunteerism is down, people don't care anymore. And I haven't found that to be true. I think the departments need to do their part to modernize and to attract the right kind of people and to shift their focus a little bit to better sort of mesh with the generations of people now that are physically able to do these things. But there's a lot of opportunity there. So for our department, we're a little different. We are very much a community-owned fire department. So we have two groups of members. Effectively, we have community members, and then we have, as a subset of that, we have responders. And we have community members that show up to the monthly business meetings, and they help with fundraisers. They do almost everything for our fundraisers, and they've got a say in more or less everything we do from a big picture standpoint. If we're going to go buy a several $100,000 piece of equipment like a fire engine, then they have a say in that, and they have a vote in the elections on chief and president and some of those positions. So we're very cognizant of our community ties in Sisterdale, and so we have maybe a little bit easier entry point than some departments. It's unusual for a lot of departments. So, you can come in and join as a community member. Our department specifically, you just have to be a resident of or own property in Kendall County, anywhere in the county, and you can come out, and we are transparent almost to a fault. I mean, you show up to a third Wednesday, 7 p.m. business meeting in Sisterdale, you're going to know everything that we have in the bank, all of our financial planning, all of the nuts and bolts are there for people to engage with. And because it's not our department, it's the community's department, it's the community's money and their assets. And we don't hide any of that stuff. And so people who feel a calling from that have a tendency to get engaged. And with our department, that can take a lot of forms. You don't have to be a responder. You don't necessarily have to go get certified as a a state certified firefighter. We have a big drone program in Sisterdale, sort of a unique thing in this area. And we have a number of people who are, they want to serve and they don't want to crawl around in bunker gear, but they are happy to show up and fly a drone and train on drones and drop PFDs and practice and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, at least for our department, if you have a will to serve and you have a capacity to serve, we will find a role that allows you to exercise that. To me, it's about the people. I get a lot of credit because I'm sort of a figurehead in the department, but my job is setting tone and culture. I can't do all the things. And so I have people that are bought into it, and I get a lot of credit for their work, but it takes a village. And like I said, if there are people who want to get engaged and they're not really sure how, come talk to us and we'll see if we can find a role that suits you.
We have Chief Brian Reilly of Sisterdale Fire Department, a all-volunteer organization in Kendall County that responded to the floods last year and continues to serve in the community. Brian, thank you for sharing a little bit about how people can get involved. Obviously, at Crestmont Private Wealth, we care a lot about client, team, and community. That's part of our ethos. And if you're thinking about serving, in any capacity, think about just getting started, getting involved. It doesn't have to be a fire department. It could be really anything. You can get involved in so many things. It could be something involved with your vocation or not. Just get out and serve. You'll feel like you've done good by your community while learning a new skill. And that's something that we care about tremendously when we're advising clients through retirement, is to stay involved in something that is good. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Brian, for joining us, and God bless.